Welcome to episode 80. That's 80 of the Balancing Act podcast. I'm Dan Strafford. Today we're kicking off our newest mini-series on constructive feedback and challenging conversations. In this series, we're going to explore the importance of both giving and receiving feedback that's designed to build individuals up and not tear them down. After today's introductory conversation, we'll be inviting experts from the coaching and leadership development field to help us and you understand more about the skills and techniques needed to get this right. Andy, looking forward to this conversation as always, but do want to check in. How you been? What's new in your world?
Yeah, doing great. It's the middle of winter here in Wisconsin, and we've got a few inches of snow on the ground. I was awoken last night by a pack of coyotes that were right outside the window. So if I'm a little bleary today, man, if you've never heard a pack of coyotes screaming and yelling for like 20 minutes straight, it's it can really grate at you.
Right, especially being woken up that way.
Right.
That is a very specific heart palpitation. I don't know. I think we have coyotes up in Massachusetts. We also have snow on the ground. We've had coyotes in our neighborhood. So you get a lot of the Nextdoor. I don't know if you know the website Nextdoor posts of coyote on the loose. Small animals beware. Yeah, exactly. So, but good to hear. I hope you get some much needed rest later today, I suppose. But this is a conversation for us on challenging conversations that I am very ready for and very intrigued by where the conversation leads throughout these next few episodes as you talk to leaders in the leadership development field. I think if we dive in and discuss why is the ability to have challenging conversations so important to organizations and to organizational health?
Yeah, look, we all want to work in organizations where everybody's getting along and there's smooth flow throughout the business. Everybody knows what everybody else is doing. But then, human nature gets in the way. We hide things. We're embarrassed to bring something forward. And all of a sudden we're wading through the mud of obfuscation, right? And we don't have the kind of transparency that's necessary to build both trust and accountability in the organization. If everybody's walking around on eggshells and the water cooler is driving communication, and it becomes a he said, she said, they said, right, fingers being pointed all over the place, how are we supposed to produce great results for our customers when we can't really talk to each other?
Heard. And I think as we discuss further here, I will admit to my own issues with challenging conversations. But let's be wholly specific here, right? Let's dive into defining what we're talking about. And if you could, what is constructive feedback?
So there's this saying that feedback is a gift. And I agree that feedback is a gift. Our son Nick and I write music, and we advertise it on Spotify playlist platforms that place your song on playlists, and you get feedback from these playlisters, and some of them say some things that are, not so great to hear.
Yep.
Like, oh, that singer's voice just kind of grated on me a little bit. And that singer is me. Right. Now, that's great feedback to have and really appreciative of it. But, feedback as a gift, it needs to be wrapped in packaging that makes us want to accept it more. So if feedback is wrapped in packaging that pushes you away and makes the the information less palatable to receive, that's really a problem. So I like to think of the word constructive as the packaging that helps make the gift of feedback more impactful for both the giver and receiver. So when that's why we're going to be talking about constructive feedback and how to deliver constructive feedback in this series.
One of my favorite phrases from a colleague of mine, and she had borrowed it from someone else, not claiming she made it up, was calling people in instead of calling people out. And so the idea of constructive feedback rather than just simply feedback, having a purpose behind it makes a lot of sense. And calling people into the conversation rather than calling them out in a meeting or calling them out for work being done, I think goes a long way. Before the show, we were discussing there are several underlying factors that can confound these challenging conversations. What's the most important confounding factor to consider, in your opinion, before engaging in a challenging conversation?
Yeah, so if I'm coming to you with something that needs to be said about some issue in either our work environment or some customer challenge, I have to remember that you have already formed your own narrative and your own set of beliefs about what the challenge is. Many times we think only about ourselves and how we're processing the information, how we're looking at the situation, and take the tack of I'm going to tell you what this is all about, and that immediately puts both parties on the back foot, and makes trying to have any kind of good communication occur. It puts up this wall. So that understanding that narrative already exists is a huge step along the way to having a good conversation.
It's the cliche of admitting you have to admit you have a problem first. Here you're acknowledging what biases might be ahead of you. Acknowledge the challenges, to this challenging conversation, and get yourself prepared to have positive's the wrong word, an outcome-based conversation that you're going to get somewhere in what you're doing. In your forthcoming book, from what you've explained to me, The Balanced Business, you're devoting an entire chapter to the topic of change management. How does that concept, change management, apply to challenging conversations?
So this is the formalization, if that's even a word,
it is
now, of what we were just talking about, that everyone has a unique set of change management curves that they apply to different situations. If we think about a change that has occurred, there is a set of models that dates back to the late 1960s, where there's a period of excitement potentially just after a change occurs, and then there's this downward cycle that happens where all of a sudden, wow, this is a really cool change, but then what does this have to do with me? How am I going to navigate through this? And that you reach then the valley of despair, where the negative, you're grappling with the real negative parts of the change and how you're going to navigate through it. And then the learning and growth starts to happen, or hopefully starts to happen. You engage in learning and growth. And in some point in the future, you then reach a new steady state where you've accepted the change, you've woven the change into your way of being. And the thing that complicates all this is that we don't just have one change management curve that we apply to all situations. change management is situation dependent. So, we talk a lot about empathy and compassion on this show. And one of the things that I think demonstrates empathy and compassion most readily is when the sender of information, the sender of it's usually bad news, but some kind of change, recognizes that the person that's on the receiving end is not on the same part of the change management curve that you are, and they've got a completely different set of change management curves that are shaped differently than yours are. So what I'm really recommending here is that if you're serious about trying to have better conversations with your people, your colleagues, in the world of work, learn more about change management and how you deal with change. Because if you understand yourself and how you navigate change, then putting yourself in somebody else's shoes and imagining how they are navigating through that same change can really help break down these barriers to communication.
Even the acknowledgement, if you were to just say you have the same change management curve, the acknowledgement that they are further behind you on that curve is just that first step, right? And then building makes a lot of sense. And hopefully, even if someone listening doesn't have the mind for this, maybe they're an engineering person who's a manager, there are curves out there for engineering. There are curves out there for video production. So the analogies, the comparing and understanding, I think, is a great way to start and a great way to understand where this can go from a change management perspective, which exists across all sorts of industries and life, to be obvious with my statement. Good time to take a breath and have a word from a sponsor here, a commercial, and we'll be back with more of The Balancing Act.
Thanks for listening to the Balancing Act podcast. I'm Andrew Tempe. In my book, Balancing Act, Teach, Coach, Mentor, Inspire, I explore the characteristics required of leaders who must find balance between strength and vulnerability, confidence and selflessness, passion and measure, and leadership and followership. Balancing Act is available today at Amazon.com.
And we're back here on a conversation, Andy, challenging conversations. We've walked through sort of defining what a constructive criticism is, how we can talk about confounding factors of challenging conversations, talked about change management. You've been the CEO of a mid-sized organization with several thousand people on extended teams throughout the org. Can you talk about the impact that power of position has on success or failure of challenging conversations?
Yeah, this one is super important. If you are a leader or a manager, you must grapple, you must wrestle with the power of your position. Whether you like it or not, position matters in challenging conversations. I'm a small man. I'm 5'7"
in stature only. Andy.
150 pounds, soaking wet. But I always heard that people were scared of me, and that had a bit to do with my demeanor. When you meet me, I have typically have this look on my face that's kind of hard to divine what it is that I'm really thinking. I don't always wear my heart on my sleeve. It's not obvious what's going on in my head. So folks would really wrestle with that. Oh my gosh, what is he thinking? Is he mad? Is he angry? And they would immediately go there that there was going to be some type of confrontation that was going to happen. And that look on my face was typically completely misconstrued,
right?
Because I'm an analytical guy. I'm always looking and watching and kind of sitting back and watching what is going on around me, so that my processing was construed as,
Yep.
some kind of stern thing was going to come back and bite whoever was giving me information. So, and this happens all the time, not in exactly the same packaging that I just described.
Sure.
Between my relationship with the teams that I led and the individuals that I worked with. But the bottom line here is that as a leader and a manager, you must recognize that it can take real courage for an individual contributor to come to you with even good information, let alone challenging information. So we've really got to take position into account. Look, I would love to have an egalitarian workplace where everybody's on the same level.
Right.
Wouldn't that be cool? But that's not the world that we live in, nor should we. There are reasons for organizational leveling. We want our organizations to be as flat as possible, but there are still positions that we have to navigate through.
Absolutely. And I do, before we exit this conversation, are there tools that you've used to help challenging conversations go more smoothly?
Yeah, in a business construct, facts, data, analysis. It is not enough to just come armed with a whole bunch of data and throw up all over everybody with a whole bunch of facts and data. Analysis that there's been some critical thinking that has been applied, that my response to this issue is not just all emotion, and emotion is important. How we feel is important. But the analysis of the facts and data can go a long way to kind of cool down the emotion. The second thing is just frequency and immediacy. If you let something stew for a very long period of time, then both parties are going to be all worked up, and you're not going to get very far. The third thing is show vulnerability. Be human. We're not robots here. Neither party in the conversation is a robot. So showing a modicum of vulnerability. Again, you don't want your heart on your sleeve and show and have emotion turn into waste, which is something that I also talk about in my second book. So there's a balancing act to be played there. And then finally, go on a continuous improvement journey as an organization, or just as an individual. When you are on a continuous improvement journey, then measurement and transparency are by definition a priority. Respect for people, the elimination, identification and minimization of waste, and a maniacal focus on the customer, all comes with a continuous improvement journey. And those things, those viewpoints are a fantastic way of, again, cooling down the conversation and having that focus on the customer.
Today's conversation has not been challenging for me. I appreciate that, Andy. But I do want to bring it back to where we started, with the balancing act between trust and accountability. Any final thoughts on the role challenging conversations play in that ongoing balancing act?
Yeah, so not to talk too much about the next book, Balanced Business, here, but I think it's important. This concept of organizational flow can also reduce the number of challenging conversations that need to be had. If you make it about the work and about creating optimal flow, which then helps maximize value that is contributed by all parties along the value stream of whatever product or service that you're delivering to the customer. Then you've got something mutual to talk about. You've got something in common that you've, immediately, again, taken the temperature of the conversation down, because the results of our challenging conversation should be pointed at how are we going to create more value for our customers, which will ultimately help both of us, because we work ostensibly for the same business and have those same goals. So, Dan, I've been doing a lot of the talking today, as I usually do in these conversations, but what did we miss today? What's your nuggets of wisdom around challenging conversations?
I know this is a podcast and your books are focused on management or managers and people who are working with employees and working with teams. But I think it's important that the conversation be, it's already extended, but understood by those who are the workers, right? Taking my perspective of it, I despise tough conversations at work. I try to avoid them.
Yeah.
And so being better about that and being open to the tough conversations, being available for the tough conversations. And to your point, I think this is just a life lesson, I think, is just don't assume the intent of the person talking to you. Don't come in with the preloaded, this is how this is going and this is why it's going this way. And I already know, Sharon doesn't like me. She never has. And, she's not going to like any of the work I do. So what's the point?
Right.
That's that, Gartner hype cycle is the trough of disillusionment. You talked about it before. Like you get down there, you don't come back. Like you're going to be an employee who's sullen, sitting in the corner, and you're not going to get opportunities. You're not going to get work. And eventually you'll be out the door by your choice or by the company's choice. And for managers, it's the same. You've already pointed out, but I do think I've come a long way in my life of understanding I have no idea what's happening in someone else's life. Yeah. I can make assumptions. I can try my best to listen, but we're sharing 10% of our personal lives, maybe 15 at work. Some people more than others, for good or for worse. So going into these conversations, just assume that everything's not 100% great at home for them. Everything's not going perfectly that day. Maybe they stepped in something on the way into the office. Maybe it rained and they didn't have an umbrella. And just those small things that can put people into bad moods, I think is so important. And then if things escalate from there, you react, right? You react and change and you do. But starting that way, as you were saying, starting with that little bit of empathy, not full on emotion, not full on having a box of tissues on the table ready to go, but being open to it and being able to have that idea, I just think is so important in any challenging conversation, personal or professional.
Yeah. Everybody's carrying around their own baggage and their own SHIT.
Exactly right.
At every moment of every day. So yeah, great point, Dan. Thank you for that.
As always, you can find this podcast across all your favorite podcast apps. If there's one out there that is new or is not being utilized, please let us know. You can always find Andy over on LinkedIn as well with postings from his website and the Saturday Morning News. But don't forget to like, rate, subscribe, share the podcast. YouTube episodes come out looking back on the content as well. Comment there, share, subscribe. You find, of course, The Balancing Act on bookshelves and stores and on your different websites that you may peruse reading materials. And do we have a target date? I don't know if I've asked this question for the forthcoming book. Is there a release date that I may not know that we can share with the listeners?
Yeah, release date is still being pinned down, but it will be late April, early May of 2023. So just a number of weeks after this episode reaches the airwaves.
There you have it. So keep your eyes peeled for that. And as always, Thank you so much for listening to The Balancing Act.